Welcome to the Men's Roundtable. Today, we are diving into a topic making recent headlines. Allegations that the CIA has confirmed Nigeria's sitting president, Bola Tinubu, as an active CIA asset. This claim raises important questions about neocolonialism, the ongoing influence of Western powers in African states long after independence. What does this mean for African sovereignty? Does Western interference foster democracy, stability, and prosperity, or does it erode these foundations? To better understand the potential implications of this claim, we'll look back at significant examples of Western involvement in African nations. The Congo gained independence from Belgium on June 30, 1960, led by Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba, a nationalist with widespread support. However, due to Congo's vast mineral wealth, it quickly became a focal point for Cold War interests. The US and the Soviet Union both sought to assert influence in the region. To further its own interests, the CIA viewed Lumumba, with his populist appeal and nationalist stance, as a threat to Western agendas. In January 1961, just 6 months after independence, Patrice Lumumba was assassinated, allegedly with CIA involvement. The US then backed leaders in Congo who favored its interests, continuing in its attempt to install a pro-Western government in Congo by identifying and supporting individual pro-US leaders, while attacking leaders who are nationalists and had the interest of Congo. The CIA was notably involved in the campaign against Joseph Kasavubu, who was Lumumba's successor, leading to his imprisonment and exile from Congo, and eventually supporting Joseph Mobutu, later known as Mobutu Sese Seko. In 1965, Mobutu took control with US support, renaming the country Zaire and ushering in a period of autocratic rule. Mobutu's reign spanned over 30 years and was marked by catastrophic economic mismanagement, widespread corruption, theft of public funds, large-scale human rights abuse, and staggering human suffering. Under his leadership, Congo's economy deteriorated, with inflation soaring over 9,600%, over 80% unemployment rate, widespread poverty, and systemic corruption. Mobutu personally amassed billions, living a life of luxury with private jets, yachts, and foreign bank accounts, while ordinary Congolese suffered from hunger, decayed infrastructure, and an abysmal health and education system. This case exemplifies the impact of Western-backed leaders who prioritize external interest over their own people's welfare. In Uganda, Western influence played a pivotal role in the rise of Idi Amin. On January 25, 1971, Amin seized power from President Milton Obote through a military coup, with support from Israeli intelligence, which sought a foothold in East Africa. Israel saw Amin as useful for their interest in arming rebel groups in southern Sudan, ensuring regional instability. The main interest of Israel in this group was to ensure that the rebellion in southern Sudan continues so as to weaken the Arab world, not for the rebels to win the war, but to keep them fighting. Amin was central to Israel's supply of arms to the Anyanaya group in southern Sudan. Israel lost interest in Amin and Uganda after the 1972 Addis Ababa Agreement, which led to a temporary cessation in conflict between the Southern Sudanese rebels and the Sudanese states. Initially, Britain and the US backed Amin, viewing him as a pro-Western asset. But as Amin's brutality became evident, international support wavered. Amin was responsible for extensive human rights abuses, ethnic cleansing, and the death of over 100,000 people. Despite mounting evidence of his atrocity, the US, with Jimmy Carter as president, hesitated to impose sanctions, largely due to geopolitical considerations during the Cold War. Ultimately, it was only through congressional intervention that sanctions were imposed on Uganda in 1978. While the British and Uganda broke diplomatic relations in 1976, there were still British covert support for Amin until his overthrow. In 1979, Amin's rule ended with the support of neighboring Tanzania, leaving behind a scarred and devastated Uganda. These cases highlight how neocolonialism can perpetuate cycles of instability, economic hardship, and repressions in Africa. Foreign powers, in pursuit of their own interests, have sometimes placed or supported leaders who prioritize Western agendas over the welfare of their people, often resulting in human suffering, economic ruin, and weakened sovereignty. As we consider the claims about President Bola Tinubu, we must ask ourselves, is Western involvement genuinely serving the interest of African nations, or is it perpetuating a system that benefits only external powers? And what are the consequences for African nations striving for independence and true self-governance? In our next episode, we'll continue exploring this topic, focusing on other African states such as Cote d'Ivoire, Togo, Sudan, Tanzania, and Ghana. Thank you for joining us today. If you found this discussion insightful, please support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Stay informed, and we'll see you next time at the main roundtable.